Welcome to the world of science fiction stories, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe my channel. Enjoy the listening. The apex predators met their match. And it wasn't what they expected. The cold void of space had never known fear until humanity arrived. For centuries the Zealer dominated the known galaxy, their towering reptilian forms striking terror into every lesser species. Their empire had expanded across 100 star systems, built on the bones of conquered civilizations. They were warriors, hunters, and apex predators without equal, until they met humans. When the first Terran scout ships entered Zealer space, the predators didn't see a threat, they saw prey. The Zealer believed in strength, they thrived on the hunt, testing themselves against the mightiest creatures they could find. Their philosophy was simple: if a species could not fight back, it did not deserve to exist. So when they found humanity, they did what they had always done, they attacked. The war was supposed to be quick. The Zealer had crushed countless species before, and they believed humans would fall just as easily. They deployed their war fleets, descending upon Earth's colonies like a storm of fire and steel. Entire planets burned, billions of humans were slaughtered in the first waves. But then something happened, something the Zealer had never encountered before. The humans fought back, but not like the others, not like prey. The Zealer expected resistance, they expected desperation. But what they got was something else, something terrifying. Humanity did not cower. They did not beg. They did not break. They adapted. Human warships, which should have been inferior, lacked the biological enhancements of the Zealer, the natural armor, the razor-sharp claws, the centuries of evolved combat instincts, but humans had something far worse: their minds. At first the Zealer underestimated them. Their fleets bombarded human strongholds, expecting the war to be over in weeks. But the weeks turned to months, and the months into years. Human ships, once fragile, became death traps laced with kinetic railguns and nuclear payloads. Their soldiers, weaker in body, became monsters in exosuits, turning themselves into walking tanks. Their generals studied the Zealer, learned their weaknesses, predicted their moves. And worst of all, humans didn't just fight for survival, they fought for revenge. The battlefields of Kepler 22b, Titan's Gate, and New Eden became graveyards for the Zealer. Their warriors, once proud, found themselves hunted. Human soldiers didn't just kill them, they studied them, experimented on them, and used their own tactics against them. The Zealer, the apex predators of the galaxy, had finally met something they could not comprehend: a predator more terrifying than themselves. Something that didn't just fight with tooth and claw, but with fire and fury, something that refused to lose. And for the first time in their long and brutal history, the Zealer felt fear. The screams of the dying Zealer warriors echoed through the ruined halls of the once mighty Dreadnought, the flagship of the Zealer fleet. A vessel that had led the extermination of countless species now drifted in orbit over the shattered remains of New Eden. Aboard the ship, Captain Doran VEC felt something alien coil around his chest, a sensation he had never known, a cold, unrelenting force that clawed at his mind: dread. He watched the security feeds with unblinking eyes, his reptilian pupils constricting as he saw what had become of his elite warriors. They were running. Zealer did not run, they did not flee, they did not beg for mercy. And yet here they were, fleeing through the blood-slick corridors of their own ship, hunted by humans. The cameras flickered as motion sensors detected movement. Shadows flitted through the corridors. The Zealer fired their plasma rifles wildly, illuminating the halls with bursts of green light. Their shots hit nothing. Then, one by one, they began to vanish, dragged into the darkness, torn apart by figures clad in black armor, moving like ghosts. No words, no battle cries, just the wet sounds of combat. Doran VEC's claws dug into the armrest of his command chair. His warriors were the deadliest hunters in the known galaxy, engineered for war, their senses sharper than any predator's. And yet they couldn't even see their enemy. A sudden crash shook the bridge. The doors groaned, dented inward. The guards raised their weapons, tails flicking in anticipation. Silence. Then, boom. The reinforced doors exploded inward, shrapnel embedding into the thick hides of the Zealer crew. Smoke poured in, and from the darkness they emerged, not beasts, not creatures of raw instinct, but humans. Their armor was sleek matte black, with no visible markings. Their visors glowed with an eerie red light, scanning, calculating. They moved with terrifying precision, spreading out, weapons raised, not in fear, but in confidence. Doran Vec rose to his feet, towering over the intruders. Even among his kind he was massive, scales thick, fangs bared, his voice a guttural growl, deep and commanding. You are surrounded, he flexed his claws. You cannot win. The lead human, a tall figure with a deep scar running down the exposed side of his face, tilted his head. He was calm, too calm. His rifle remained lowered as if this were not a battle but an execution. Surrounded, the human's voice was quiet, amused. That's cute. Doran's eyes flickered with uncertainty. Something was wrong. His warriors, still outnumbered, should have been tearing them apart. But instead, something moved behind him, fast. Before he could turn, a blade slid through the thick muscles of his arm. He roared, spinning, but there was nothing, just a whisper of movement. Another human, another ghost. They weren't fighting like warriors, they were fighting like monsters. Doran Vec staggered, clutching his bleeding arm, fangs bared, seething, you are prey. You do not know what you've done. The scarred human smiled, stepping closer. His voice was cold. No, he raised his weapon. You don't know what we are. The Zealer had spent centuries hunting the weak. Tonight, they had finally met the apex predators of the galaxy, and they would pay the price. Doran Vec lunged. His massive frame moved like a blur, claws slashing toward the scarred human's throat. Too slow. The human sidestepped with unnatural precision, like he'd expected the attack before it even happened. Before Doran could recover, the human's knee slammed into his gut hard. The impact sent shock waves of pain through his body, his armored hide cracking under the force. Impossible. Doran had fought in countless wars, he had crushed armored beasts with his bare hands. He had never been hit like that before. Staggering back, he barely had time to react before another human attacked from his blind spot. A flash of silver, then agony. A combat knife slid between his ribs, slipping under the thick scales as if they weren't even there. He roared, swinging wildly, but hit nothing but air. They were toying with him. His vision blurred, his warriors were dying around him. The bridge had become a slaughterhouse. The humans were methodical, silent. Their weapons hissed with suppressed fire, dropping Zealer warriors before they could even react. There were no shouts of victory, no boasts, no cries of rage, just the methodical efficiency of predators. One of his lieutenants, a veteran of 100 campaigns, tried to charge but a human grabbed him mid-lunge with shocking strength. The human twisted, using the Zealer's own momentum against him, snapping his spine with a single brutal movement. Doran had seen many things in his time, he had faced monsters, fought wars that turned entire planets into graveyards. But this was something else. This was humanity. The scarred one stepped forward again, boots clicking against the blood-slicked floor. His rifle was still down. He didn't even need it. His comrades had already finished the job. Doran was the last one standing. The human tilted his head, studying him. You don't understand what's happening, do you? His voice was calm, almost bored. You thought this was just another war, Doran. Doran's breath came in ragged gasps. He snarled, baring his fangs, but the human kept talking. But this isn't war, the human continued. This is payback. The words hit Doran harder than any physical blow. We've studied you, the human said, tapping his helmet where red lenses gleamed. For years, your tactics, your biology, your weaknesses. We adapted. Doran staggered, legs feeling weak. You're not fighting cattle anymore, the human said. You're fighting something that doesn't just survive. The rifle finally came up, the barrel leveling with Doran's skull. Something that wins. A single gunshot echoed through the bridge. Doran Vec, last warlord of the Zealer, fell. His body crumpled to the floor, blood pooling beneath him. His glassy reptilian eyes stared upward, frozen in a look of pure, uncomprehending horror. The humans didn't celebrate. They didn't even speak. They just moved, sweeping the bridge to ensure no survivors remained. The mission wasn't over, because humanity didn't fight for glory, they fought to finish the job. The scarred human tapped his comms. "Bridge secure," he said. A voice crackled through the earpiece, "Copy that. Execute the purge." The humans moved as one, planting charges along the ship's critical systems. In minutes, the Khan, the flagship of a once unstoppable empire, was rigged to blow. The team exfiltrated silently, boarding their dropship. As they left, the first explosions rocked the vessel. Fire and debris erupted from its hull, its once proud structure breaking apart. The Zealer Empire had ruled the stars for centuries, but now their reign was over. And humanity was just getting started. As the Khan erupted in a violent inferno behind them, the human strike team sat in silence aboard their dropship. The mission had been swift and surgical. The Zealer warlords were dead, their command structure shattered, their greatest warship reduced to burning wreckage. And yet there was no celebration. The team's leader, Commander Elias Kane, the scarred soldier who had personally executed Doran Vec, removed his helmet, running a gloved hand over his face. His expression was blank, but his eyes were sharp, calculating. "The war isn't over," he said. "Not yet." The dropship hummed as it docked aboard the Retribution, one of humanity's newly commissioned warships designed specifically for exterminating the Zealer. As the strike team disembarked, a figure waited, Admiral Helena Graves. A woman in her late 50s, her once dark hair streaked with silver, deep lines marked her face, but there was no weakness in her expression, only steel. "Report," she said as Kane approached. "The Khan has been neutralized." "No survivors," Kane replied, voice devoid of pride or emotion. "Doran Vec is dead. We made sure of it." Admiral Graves exhaled slowly, nodding. "Good. One less monster in the galaxy." Kane hesitated for a fraction of a second, then spoke. "Admiral, it was too easy." Graves met his gaze. "Explain, Kane." Her jaw tightened. "We wiped out their command ship, their warlords, their strongest warriors," Kane said, voice growing darker, "but they fought like animals. No coordination, no fallback plan, no escape strategy." He paused. "That's not how an apex predator acts when it's losing." A heavy silence fell between them. Graves folded her arms. "You think they're planning something?" Kane nodded. "I don't think they expected to win this battle. I think they wanted us to think we already won the war." The Admiral's expression hardened. "If you're right, humanity isn't just fighting a crumbling empire. We're walking into a trap." Far from the battlefields, on a hidden Zealer colony pulsed with life, the survivors of humanity's onslaught gathered in silence. Their once proud warriors, now battered, bleeding, and afraid. In the center of the room stood an elder Zealer, body adorned with ceremonial scars. He was ancient, his scales dulled with age, but his presence radiated command. High Chancellor Vokal, the last ruler of the Zealer, stood before him. A younger warrior knelt, claws digging into the floor, body bearing the fresh wounds of battle. His voice trembled with rage. They are not like the others, Chancellor. Humans do not fight to survive, they fight to eradicate." His tail flicked with anxiety. "We were the hunters. Now, we are prey. Vocal remained silent for a long moment. Then he slowly stepped forward, resting a clawed hand on the warrior's shoulder. "You are right," the elder said. "We underestimated them. We believed them weak, fragile, lesser." His black eyes narrowed. "But we were wrong." The gathered Zealer warriors shifted uneasily. They had never known true fear before, not until now. But Vocal continued, voice quiet yet firm, "The most dangerous creature in the galaxy is not the strongest." He lifted his gaze, a slow, sinister smile forming. "It is the one that refuses to die." A murmur of understanding spread through the room. The humans had forced the Zealer into a corner. But an apex predator is never more dangerous than when it has nothing left to lose. Vocal turned toward a holographic display showing a map of the galaxy. The red markings that once represented their empire were fading, replaced by human-controlled sectors. But there was one place, one final stronghold that remained untouched. A world deep within uncharted space, a place of legends, a place where the Zealer's darkest weapons had been hidden, sealed away for millennia. His claws tightened into a fist. "If humanity wants to finish this war," Vocal whispered, voice like a hiss of venom, "then we shall give them a war unlike any they have ever seen." His eyes burned with new purpose. The time for battle was over. Now, it was time for extinction. The stars shimmered like distant fireflies against the black void of space. But aboard the Retribution, there was no time for stargazing. The war room was silent, the weight of the unknown pressing down on every soul present. Admiral Helena Graves stood at the center of the dimly lit chamber, hands clasped behind her back, expression carved from stone. Before her, holographic displays showed the latest intelligence reports. At her side, Commander Elias Kane remained still, gaze locked on the swirling red indicators blinking across the galactic map. "What are we looking at?" Graves asked. The Retribution trembled as its engines roared to life, its massive frame cutting through the void like a spear aimed at the heart of the enemy. Across the fleet, alarms blared. Crew members sprinted through the corridors, strapping into combat stations, preparing for the unimaginable. "Earth is under siege," an officer reported, sweat glistening on his forehead as he turned from his console. Zealer fleet emerging from slip space, 3,000 warships detected, with more arriving every minute. Estimated ground forces, in the billions, ma'am. The numbers sent a chill through the room. The Zealer weren't just launching a final attack, they were throwing everything they had left at humanity. Commander Elias Kane exhaled sharply beside her. "They're desperate," his voice was calm, but there was an edge, something cold. "They know they can't outlast us, so they're going for total annihilation." Graves nodded, mind racing. The Zealer had already lost too much, their empire was crumbling. But if they could take humanity with them, they would consider it a victory. "Open a fleet-wide channel," she ordered. A brief pause. Then a calm officer nodded. "You're live." Admiral Graves took a slow breath. Across the hundreds of human warships, her voice echoed through speakers, reaching the ears of every pilot, every soldier, every last soul preparing for the fight of their lives. "This is Admiral Graves," she began, voice steady and strong. "The Zealer have made their choice. They are coming to burn our home, to erase everything we are. They think we will break." She paused, letting the weight of those words settle. "They think we will run." Her grip tightened on the console. "They have no idea who we are." Across the fleet, the response was immediate. A roar of voices, thousands of soldiers pounding their chests, pilots slamming their helmets shut, officers gripping their weapons. "We are humanity," Graves continued, voice rising. "We are not prey. We are not weak. We do not run. We fight." The fleet erupted in battle cries. Graves' lips curled into a grim smile. "Now, let's remind these bastards why the galaxy fears us." She cut the channel and turned to Kane. "Deploy the fleet." Kane gave a sharp nod. "With pleasure, the battle began. The first Zealer warships descended through the atmosphere, their monstrous hulls blocking out the sun as they rained fire onto the surface below. Cities burned, skyscrapers crumbled, millions screamed as plasma bombardments tore through the streets. But humanity was ready. The moment the first Zealer dropships landed, they were met with hellfire. From the shadows of ruined cities, human resistance forces launched ambushes. High-powered railguns, designed specifically to pierce Zealer armor, turned entire squads of reptilian warriors into pulp. Mechs, towering steel giants piloted by elite human soldiers, waded into the battlefield, ripping through enemy lines with terrifying efficiency. Tanks rolled through fire and rubble, their cannons blasting apart Zealer war beasts. Then the black-armored ghosts arrived, the same human Spec Ops units that had slaughtered the warlords aboard the Khan, moving like shadows through the chaos, striking without mercy. Zealer warriors, once the apex predators of the galaxy, found themselves hunted on the front lines. A Zealer commander bellowed orders, only to be silenced by a single suppressed shot to the skull. Another group of Zealer warriors charged through the ruins, only to be trapped when humans detonated hidden explosives, turning the entire block into a burning graveyard. This was not a battle, it was extermination. The battle above Earth was just as brutal. Human warships, outnumbered 10-1, fought with savage precision. Zealer warships were larger, stronger, deadlier, but humanity did not care. They adapted. Carrier ships launched waves of drones, weaving between enemy formations and detonating inside Zealer vessels. Frigates, using their superior speed, ripped apart enemy supply lines. And at the center of it all, the Retribution, the flagship of the fleet, cut through the void. Its experimental railgun, humanity's most powerful kinetic projectile system, had only been used once before. But now, it was aimed at the Zealer Dread, leading the invasion. Admiral Graves stood firm as the weapon locked onto its target. Kane stood beside her, eyes cold fire. The Retribution shook as the railgun discharged. A 10,000-ton projectile, moving at half the speed of light, ripped through the Dread like a knife through flesh. The warship didn't explode immediately, it simply ceased to be whole. The size of a city was carved through its core, atmosphere venting into space. The remaining Zealer fleet hesitated. For the first time in the history of their species, they had no leader, no warlords, no high command, only fear. Then the human fleet moved in for the kill. One by one, the Zealer warships fell. They had come to exterminate humanity, but humanity had other plans. The battlefield was silent. Smoke and wreckage drifted through the atmosphere. Zealer bodies lay in the streets, their warships nothing more than floating tombs. On the bridge of the Retribution, Admiral Graves stood over the remains of the galactic map. The Zealer Empire was gone. A hand touched her shoulder. Kane, face still unreadable, but something else in his eyes now, something even colder than before, asked, "What now?" Graves looked at the ruined battlefield and the endless void beyond. The Zealer had ruled for centuries, believing themselves the ultimate predators. But now, humanity ruled the stars. Graves turned away from the map, voice quiet. Now, we make sure no one ever forgets what happens when you try to hunt humans. The galaxy belongs to us now, and we will never be prey again.